The signal came from nowhere. It pulsed through the cold dark of space like a heartbeat that refused to die. For 3,000 years, it had called out to anyone who would listen. No one ever did. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the data scroll across the screen. Her crew had found the beacon by accident. They were mapping dead stars in a region no one cared about when the signal hit their sensors. At first, they thought it was broken equipment. Then they realized the truth. Someone had left a message in the void, and it was still playing. "What language is that?" Yuna asked her communications officer. "All of them," he replied. His voice was quiet with confusion. "It cycles through over 8,000 languages. Some we recognize. Most we do not. But the message is always the same." Yuna leaned forward. "Show me." The words appeared on the main screen. They were simple. They were clear. And they made no sense at all. "Do not wake the silence. Do not cross the dark threshold. We failed. You must not." "Who sent this?" Yuna demanded. Her science officer pulled up the beacon's energy signature. The technology was old. Very old. But the design was unmistakable. "Humans," she said. "This is human technology." The bridge went quiet. Humans were a dead species. Everyone knew that. They had vanished from the galaxy over 3,000 years ago. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others said a plague took them. A few believed they simply gave up and faded away. Whatever the truth, they were gone. All that remained were ruins on forgotten worlds, and stories that no one believed anymore. Yuna stared at the message for a long time. She had seen many strange things in her career. She had fought wars and made peace. She had watched stars die and civilizations rise. But something about these words made her feel cold in a way she could not explain. "Send this to the Galactic Assembly," she ordered. "They need to see it." 2 weeks later, Yuna stood before the council. The great chamber held representatives from 12 elder species, each one older and more powerful than the next. At the center sat High Counselor Biran, a creature of flowing silver skin and eyes like black diamonds. He ruled the assembly with absolute confidence. In his view, nothing in the galaxy could threaten them. Nothing ever had. "You brought us here for this?" Biran asked. His voice echoed through the chamber like a disappointed parent. "A warning from a dead species?" "With respect, High Counselor," Yuna replied. "The message specifically mentioned something called the Dark Threshold. My researchers found references in old human records. It is a region of space, approximately 200 light-years across. No ship has ever returned from it. No probe, no signal, nothing. And you believe this is cause for concern?" "I believe we should investigate carefully before..." "Before what?" Biran interrupted. He rose from his seat and spread his arms wide. "The humans are gone, Admiral. They failed. They said so themselves in their little message. They were a primitive species who burned bright and died fast. Whatever frightened them into leaving warnings for the rest of us was probably a solar storm or a disease or their own foolish wars." Laughter rippled through the council. Yuna felt her jaw tighten but said nothing. "I am authorizing an expedition," Biran continued. 40 ships will enter this dark threshold and claim whatever resources lie within. If the humans were too weak to survive there, that is their failure. We are not humans. We do not fail." The council voted in favor. It was not even close. In the back of the chamber, a young man watched the proceedings with growing dread. His name was Teho, and, officially, he worked as a translator for the Assembly's cultural archives. Unofficially, he was something else entirely. Something the galaxy had forgotten existed. Teho was human. He was born on a world called New Goryeo, hidden deep within a nebula that no one had mapped in 3,000 years. 2 million humans lived there in secret. The descendants of refugees who had fled the galaxy when everything fell apart. They had survived by staying silent, by staying hidden, by never, ever revealing themselves to the species who had inherited the stars. Teho had been sent to the assembly 10 years ago to watch and listen, to make sure the galaxy never found them, and to warn his people if the unthinkable ever happened. The unthinkable was happening now. He left the chamber as quickly as he could without drawing attention. In his quarters, he activated a communication device that looked like a simple data pad. The signal it sent was old technology, completely untraceable. It would take 3 days to reach New Goryeo. But his people needed to know. The seal is breaking, he whispered into the device. They found the beacon. They are sending ships into the threshold. The warning failed. They are not listening. He paused and took a deep breath. His hands were shaking. We need to prepare. Whatever happens next, we need to be ready. Far away, in a region of space where stars flickered in patterns that made no sense, something stirred. It had been sleeping for a very long time. 3,000 years of silence had been peaceful. 3,000 years of darkness had been comfortable. But now there were new sounds, new signals, new minds reaching out across the void. The thing that lived in the dark threshold did not think the way living creatures thought. It did not feel the way they felt. But it understood hunger. It understood patience, and it understood that food was coming. It waited. It had always been good at waiting. Back on the Assembly's capital world, Admiral Yuna stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. Ships were already being prepared for the expedition. Crews were being selected. Supplies were being loaded. In 6 months, 40 vessels would cross into the unknown and claim glory for the Galactic Assembly. She should have felt proud. She should have felt excited. Instead, she felt nothing but a deep and terrible certainty that something was very wrong. The human message played again in her mind. We failed. You must not. What did you find out there? She whispered to the empty sky. What made you so afraid that you spent your last days warning strangers who would never listen? The sky gave no answer. The stars burned cold and distant, and somewhere in the dark between them, something ancient and hungry began to wake. The fleet crossed into the dark threshold on a bright morning by Galactic Standard Time. 40 ships moved in perfect formation, their engines burning blue against the black. Captain Minho stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the boundary pass beneath them like a line drawn in shadow. Nothing happened. No explosion. No attack. Just silence. All ships report successful crossing, his communications officer announced. Fleet cohesion is maintained. Minho nodded slowly. He had expected something. A defense system, a warning shot, anything. But there was only the empty dark stretching out before them. Begin standard survey protocols, he ordered. And keep all sensors at maximum range. I want to know if anything moves out here. For the first 3 weeks, the expedition found nothing. Empty space. Dead planets. Stars that burned without warmth. Dr. Hana, the chief science officer, spent her days studying readings that made no sense, energy signatures that appeared and vanished, gravity fluctuations that followed no pattern. Time itself seemed to move differently here, running fast on some ships and slow on others. This is wrong, she told Captain Minho one evening. Space does not behave this way. It is like the universe itself is sick in this region. Wounded somehow. Wounded by what? Hana shook her head. I do not know. But whatever happened here, it was not natural. The nightmares started in the 4th week. Lieutenant Seojun was the first to notice the pattern. He was the security chief, a former soldier who had seen combat on a dozen worlds. He knew what fear looked like. He knew how it spread through a crew, and he knew that what was happening on the horizon's edge was not normal. Crew members were waking up screaming. They reported the same dream, a vast darkness that watched them, a presence that knew their names, a voice that whispered promises of peace if they would only stop. Stop moving. Stop thinking. Stop existing. It is just stress, the ship's doctor insisted. We are far from home in unknown space. The mind plays tricks, the same trick on 40 different people. Sojun asked. The exact same dream. The doctor had no answer. One night, Seojun was making his rounds when he heard whispering from Cargo Bay 7. He approached carefully, his hand on his weapon. The door was sealed, but the whispers came through clearly, voices speaking words he did not recognize. He opened the door. 3 crew members stood in the center of the bay. They faced the wall, their backs to him, completely motionless. Their mouths moved in unison, speaking coordinates over and over in a language that sounded like it came from somewhere very old and very far away. What are you doing? Sojun demanded. They did not respond. They did not even turn around. They just kept whispering, their voices flat and empty like recordings played through broken speakers. Seojun grabbed the nearest one and spun him around. The man's eyes were open but saw nothing. His face was slack. His lips continued to move, forming words in that dead language. Then he blinked. Life returned to his eyes. He looked at Seojun with confusion. "Lieutenant? What am I doing here?" "I was in my quarters. I was sleeping." He remembered nothing. None of them did. Captain Minho called an emergency meeting with the other ship commanders. The reports were the same across the fleet. Nightmares, missing time, crew members found in strange places with no memory of how they got there. Something was happening to them, and it was getting worse. "We should turn back," one captain suggested. "This expedition is not worth our lives. The Assembly will not accept failure," another replied. High Counselor Biran made that very clear. Minho listened to them argue and felt a cold weight settling in his chest. He thought about the human warning, "Do not wake the silence." They had ignored it. They had laughed at it. And now they were trapped in this place with something they did not understand. "We send one ship back," he decided. The Starlight. Fastest vessel in the fleet. They will carry our reports to the Assembly and request instructions. The captains agreed. It was a compromise. A way to ask for help without admitting they were afraid. The Starlight powered up its engines and turned toward the boundary. The whole fleet watched as it accelerated toward home. For a moment, hope flickered in their hearts. Then the Starlight exploded. There was no attack. No weapon fire. No warning. 1 second the ship was flying. The next it was a ball of fire and debris spreading across the void. 400 crew members died in an instant. "What happened?" Minho shouted. His science officer stared at her readings with wide eyes. "I do not know. The explosion came from inside the ship. But there was no malfunction. No damage. It is like the ship just decided to destroy itself. Or something decided for it." That night, Dr. Hana recorded her final log entry. She sat alone in her lab, surrounded by data that proved the impossible. She spoke quietly into her recorder, knowing that the words might never reach anyone. "The humans were not afraid of the dark," she said. "They were afraid of what lives in it. And it is awake now. It has been watching us since we arrived, testing us, learning our systems, our languages, our minds. It let us come in because it was hungry. And now, it will not let us leave." She paused. Somewhere in the distance, she heard whispers. The same dead language. The same flat voices. "If anyone finds this recording, please listen carefully. Do not come looking for us. Do not try to rescue us. There is nothing left to save. Just remember the warning we ignored. Remember what it cost us." She turned off the recorder and sat in the darkness. The whispers grew louder. They were coming from everywhere now. From the walls, from the floor, from inside her own head, and in the void between the stars. Something vast and patient smiled without a face. The food had arrived. It was time to feed. The fleet was never heard from again. 40 ships, 12,000 crew members. They vanished into the dark threshold like stones dropped into black water. The Galactic Assembly waited for reports that never came. They sent signals that received no reply. They told themselves that communication equipment had failed. That the fleet would return any day now, with tales of glory and discovery. Deep down, they knew the truth. They just were not ready to admit it yet. The humans had tried to warn them. The galaxy had not listened. And now the price was coming due. New Goryeo floated in the heart of a purple nebula, hidden from the universe by gas clouds and careful design. For 3,000 years, humans had lived here in secret. They built cities inside hollowed asteroids. They grew food in massive underground farms. They raised children who had never seen the stars beyond their hiding place. Elder Soman stood in the council chamber and read the message from Teho for the 3rd time. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not waver. She had trained her whole life for this moment, hoping it would never come. "The seal is broken," she announced to the council. "The Galactic Assembly has sent ships into the dark threshold. They ignored our ancestors' warning." The chamber erupted in voices. Some were angry, some were afraid. Most were both. We should do nothing, said a counselor named Hyunsik. This is not our problem. We survived by hiding. We will continue to hide. And when the entity finishes with them, another counselor asked, do you think it will stop? Do you think it will go back to sleep? Our ancestors contained it before. The boundary held for 3,000 years. Our ancestors nearly died trying. Elder Salmon cut in. Her voice was sharp enough to silence the room. 90% of our population. Billions of people. That was the cost of containing it the first time. And we did not defeat it. We only made it sleep. She turned to face a large screen on the wall. With a gesture, she activated the old records. Images appeared that no one outside New Goryeo had seen in millennia. Ships burning in the void. Planets stripped of life. Creatures that used to be human, walking through the ruins of cities. Their eyes empty. Their mouths speaking words that were not their own. This is what our ancestors faced, Salmon said. The entity does not conquer. It does not negotiate. It feeds. It takes minds and uses them. It spreads through technology, through signals, through any connection it can find. Our ancestors fought for 200 years. They developed weapons, tactics, ways to hurt something that should not exist. And they still lost, Hyunsik pointed out. They chose to retreat. Salmon corrected. There is a difference. They could have kept fighting. They could have brought the entire galaxy into the war, but they knew the cost would be too high. So they made another choice. They went silent. They destroyed their beacons. They abandoned their worlds. They hid themselves away and left warnings for anyone foolish enough to follow. The warnings failed, said Commander Daewon. He stood near the door, arms crossed, his face unreadable. As head of New Goryeo's defense force, he had spent his life preparing for a threat he hoped would never come. The galaxy did not listen. Why should we risk ourselves for species that mocked our ancestors? Because if we do nothing, we die anyway, said a young woman's voice. Everyone turned. Jiwoo walked into the chamber without permission. She was a pilot, barely 25 years old, with a reputation for breaking rules and getting results. She was also Taeho's sister, which meant she knew things most people did not. Jiwoo, this is a closed session, Daewon said. The entity is awake, she replied, ignoring him. Right now, it is feeding on 12,000 people from that expedition. When it finishes, it will be stronger. It will spread. It will reach beyond the threshold and start consuming system after system. Our hiding place is good. It is not that good. You do not know that, Hyunsik argued. I know the records. The entity grows by eating minds. The more it eats, the faster it spreads. The Galactic Assembly has trillions of sentient beings across thousands of worlds. If the entity reaches them, if it starts feeding on that scale, nothing will stop it. Not hiding, not running, nothing. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew she was right. They just did not want to admit it. Elder Soman looked at Jiwoo for a long moment. Then she looked at Daewon. Then at the council members who had spent their lives keeping humanity safe through secrecy and isolation. My grandmother was there, Soman said quietly. At the end, when our ancestors made the choice to flee, she told me stories when I was young. About friends who died, about ships that sacrificed themselves so others could escape, about the moment they crossed the boundary and looked back at everything they were leaving behind. She paused. Her eyes were wet, but her voice stayed steady. She said the hardest part was not the dying. It was knowing they could have won if the galaxy had listened, if other species had believed them, if anyone had helped. Instead, they fought alone, and when they could fight no more, they ran. They left warnings because they hoped, against all reason, that someday someone would listen. No one listened, Daewon said. No, Salmon agreed. But that does not change what we must do. She stood up straight and addressed the council with the authority of 10 generations of survivors. We will break our silence. After 3,000 years, humanity will return to the galaxy. Not to beg, not to plead. We will show them what our ancestors built, what our ancestors learned, what our ancestors sacrificed. We will give them one chance to fight beside us. And if they refuse, Hyunsik asked, then they die, Jiwoo answered. And we fight alone, like we always have. Daewon looked at his young pilot with something close to respect. You understand what this means. We will be outnumbered, outgunned. Many of us will not survive. I know, Jiwoo said. But my brother is out there, and those idiots who ignored our warning are about to wake up something that will eat the entire galaxy. Someone has to stop it. If not us, who? The council voted. It was not unanimous. It was not easy. But when the count was finished, the decision was made. Humanity was going to war. In the shipyards hidden beneath New Goryeo's surface, lights flickered on for the first time in generations. Vessels that had been sleeping for 3,000 years began to wake. Their hulls were dark, their systems were silent. They had been designed to fight an enemy that could not be seen or heard or understood. 2,000 ships. The last fleet of humanity, built by ancestors who knew they might someday be needed again. Jiwoo stood in the hangar and watched her ship being prepared. It was small and fast, designed for strikes that no larger vessel could survive. She would be on the front lines. She might not come back. Behind her, Daewon appeared. He did not say anything for a long moment. Then he put a hand on her shoulder. Your brother will be proud, he said. He'll be angry, Jiwoo replied. He always told me to stay safe, then prove him wrong. Come back alive, she smiled. But there was no joy in it, just determination. Just the weight of 3,000 years pressing down on her shoulders. I'll do my best, she said. But first, we have a galaxy to save. The darkness spread faster than anyone expected. 30 systems went silent in the first month. No warnings, no distress signals. Just silence. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Probes vanished the moment they entered, affected space. The Galactic Assembly watched their maps turn black, one star at a time, and realized they were facing something they could not understand. Admiral Yuna stood in the war room and studied the patterns. She had warned them. She had told them to be careful. They had laughed at her concerns and sent 40 ships to their deaths. Now she was in command of whatever was left. We have confirmed reports of refugees from the Outer Rim, her aide reported. Over 2 million civilians fleeing toward the core worlds. They are terrified. They speak of shadows that move through walls. Ships that turn against their crews. People who stop being themselves. What do they mean by that? Yuna asked. The aide hesitated. They say the entity speaks through those it takes. It uses their voices, their faces. It offers peace, silence, an end to fear. Some people accept. When they do, they stop fighting. They just stand there and wait to be consumed. Yuna closed her eyes. The human warning echoed in her mind. Do not wake the silence. Now she understood. The silence was not emptiness. It was surrender. It was giving up. It was letting the entity win without a fight. Where is High Counselor Biran? She asked. Removed from power. The Assembly voted this morning. He has been confined to his residence pending further judgment. Good. At least they learned that much. But learning was not enough. The combined fleet of the Galactic Assembly numbered over 10,000 ships, crewed by the finest soldiers from a dozen species. They had weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand supernovas, technology that had dominated the galaxy for centuries. None of it mattered. Every engagement ended the same way. Ships would fire on the approaching darkness. Their weapons would pass through without effect. Then the darkness would touch them, and crews would start hearing whispers. Systems would fail. People would turn on each other. Within hours, the ships would go silent and join the spreading void. We cannot fight this, Yuna admitted to her command staff. We do not even know what it is. Then what do we do? Her tactical officer asked. Before she could answer, alarms began screaming across the war room. Sensors detected something emerging from fold space near the core worlds. Something big. Hostile contact? Yuna demanded. Unknown. Configuration does not match any known species. The sensor officer paused, his face going pale. Admiral, there are 2,000 of them. Yuna's blood ran cold. 2,000 ships appearing without warning at the heart of the galaxy. If this was a new attack, if the entity had found a way to build vessels, Then everything was already over. Then the message came. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, reaching every ship and station in the sector. A human voice spoke words that no one had heard in 3,000 years. "This is Commander Daewon of the Human Defense Fleet. We have come to honor an old promise. You woke the entity. We will help you survive it. But you will follow our lead, or you will die. There will be no negotiation. There will be no debate. Accept our terms and prepare for battle. Refuse, and face extinction alone." The war room erupted in chaos. Humans, living humans, an entire fleet of them appearing from nowhere with technology no one recognized. It was impossible. It was a miracle. It was terrifying. Yuna silenced the room with a gesture. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Open a channel," she ordered. "I will speak with them." Commander Daewon appeared on screen. He was older than Yuna expected, with gray in his hair and scars on his face. His eyes held the weight of generations. "Admiral Yuna," he said, "I have read the reports of your warning to the Assembly. You tried to make them listen. You failed, but you tried. That counts for something." "I do not understand," Yuna replied. "Humans have been extinct for 3,000 years. Not extinct. Hidden. Our ancestors fled the galaxy when the entity could not be stopped. They went silent. They left warnings. They hoped someone would listen." His expression hardened. "No one did. And now we are all paying the price. Why come back? Why help us after we ignored everything you tried to tell us?" Daewon was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, "Because our ancestors did not leave warnings for species who would listen. They left them hoping someone would not. They knew this day would come. They knew we would need a reason to return, and they knew that if we did not, everyone would die, us included." Yuna stared at him through the screen. Behind him, she could see the bridge of his ship, dark metal, silent systems, technology designed to fight something that could not be fought. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "Everything," Daewon replied. "Your ships, your crews, your trust. The entity spreads through signals and connections. We will need to fight without wireless communication. Hardwired systems only. Weapons tuned to frequencies your scientists have never studied. It will be difficult. Many will die. But it is the only way." "How do you know this will work?" "Because our ancestors did it before. They hurt the entity. They pushed it back. They could not destroy it. But they forced it to sleep. We can do the same. But only if we work together." The first battle came 3 days later. The entity had spread to a system called Velcor, consuming 2 billion people in under a week. Yuna's fleet and the human ships moved in together. Following Daewon's instructions exactly, Jiwoo led the first strike. Her squadron of fast attack ships dove into the darkness, weapons blazing. The entity tried to reach them, tried to whisper into their minds, but the human ships were shielded, silent, invisible to the presence that fed on signals and thought. She fired at coordinates her sensors could not see, trusting the calculations passed to her through hardwired cables. Light exploded in the void. For the first time since the expedition vanished, the entity recoiled. "It felt that," she reported. "It can be hurt. Then hurt it more," Daewon commanded. The battle lasted 18 hours. The combined fleet lost over 300 ships. Crews died in the hundreds. But when it was over, the entity had retreated. The darkness pulled back from Velcor. The spread stopped. For the first time, there was hope. Yuna met Daewon in person aboard his flagship. They stood alone in his ready room. Two commanders from species who should have been allies 3,000 years ago. "Why did you really come back?" she asked. "You could have stayed hidden. You could have let us die." Daewon looked at a picture on his wall. It showed a young woman in an old uniform, standing before a ship that no longer existed. "My grandmother," he said. "She was on the last ship to leave during the retreat. She watched friends die so she could escape. She spent her whole life wondering if it was worth it. If running was the right choice. If hiding was cowardice or wisdom." He turned back to Yuna. "When I was young, she told me that someday the galaxy would need us again. She told me that when that day came, we had to be ready. Not because the galaxy deserved our help, but because helping was the right thing to do. Because that is who humans are. We do not abandon people. Even people who abandoned us. Yuna felt something shift inside her. Shame, gratitude, respect. All of it mixed together into something she could not name. Thank you, she said, for everything. Daewon shook his head. Do not thank me yet. This was one battle. The war is just beginning, and the hardest part is still ahead. The final battle began at the heart of the dark threshold. Taeho had spent months decoding ancient records, searching for something their ancestors had known but never shared. Now, standing on the bridge of the command ship, he pointed at a holographic map that showed what lay at the center of the void. This is it, he said. The core. Our ancestors found it during the First War. It is not a ship. It is not a station. It is older than the galaxy itself. A structure that exists outside normal space. This is where the entity comes from. This is where it sleeps, and this is the only place we can hurt it badly enough to make it stop. Commander Daewon studied the map. The core looked like a wound in reality. A place where space folded in on itself in ways that made no sense. Getting there would mean flying through the entity's strongest territory. Many ships would not survive. What do we need to do once we reach it? He asked. We cannot destroy it, Taeho admitted. Our ancestors tried. The entity is too old, too fundamental. It is woven into the fabric of reality itself. But we can wound it, force it back into dormancy, make it sleep for another 100,000 years. How? Taeho brought up technical specifications that had been passed down through generations. Resonance charges, tuned to the exact frequency of the core's existence. We plant them at key points and detonate them simultaneously. The resulting disruption will force the entity to retreat. It will have to sleep to recover. And the ships that plant the charges? Admiral Yuna asked. She had joined the briefing, standing beside Daewon as an equal partner. The old divisions between species seemed meaningless now. What happens to them? Taeho did not answer. He did not need to. I will lead the strike team, Jiwoo said. Every eye in the room turned to her. She stood near the door, her flight suit already sealed. Her expression calm. Jiwoo, this is a suicide mission, Daewon said. Maybe, but my ship is fast enough to get in and get out. If anyone has a chance of surviving, it is me. She looked at her brother. You decoded the records. You gave us a path to victory. Let me finish what you started. Taeho wanted to argue. He wanted to order her to stay behind. But he knew his sister. He knew that stubborn fire in her eyes. She would go whether he approved or not. Come back alive, he said. That is an order, she smiled. I will do my best. The combined fleet entered the dark threshold together. 5,000 ships from a dozen species, led by 2,000 human vessels that had waited 3,000 years for this moment. The entity knew they were coming. It gathered its strength and prepared to feed. The first wave hit them before they reached the midpoint. Darkness swept through the fleet, like a living thing. Ships vanished. Crews screamed. The whispers came from everywhere, promising peace, offering surrender, begging them to just stop fighting. Hold formation, Daewon commanded. Trust your training. Trust your shields. The human technology worked. Ships that followed the protocols survived. Ships that did not were consumed. Slowly, painfully, the fleet pushed forward. Then the entity spoke. Not through whispers this time, through a face. Captain Minho appeared on every screen in the fleet, his eyes empty, his voice flat. The man who had died months ago looked out at them with something that was not human behind his gaze. You returned, the entity said through Minho's mouth. We are pleased. You understand us better than these others. You know what we offer. Join us. Be silent. Be at peace. No more fear. No more death. Only quiet, Elder Salmon responded. She had come with the fleet despite her age, insisting that humanity's leader must be present for whatever happened next. Our ancestors chose silence to protect the future, she said. You offer silence that ends it. We refuse. The entity considered this. Minho's face twisted into something that might have been confusion. You cannot win. You know this. Your ancestors knew this. Why do you keep fighting? It was Jiwoo who answered, her voice broadcast to the entire fleet. Because we are human. Because giving up is not in our nature. Because as long as one of us draws breath, we will keep pushing forward. You can take our ships, you can take our minds, but you cannot take our choice, and we choose to fight, the entity screamed. Not in words, in pure rage. The darkness surged forward with terrible force. All ships, covering fire, Daewon ordered. Strike team, go now. Jiwoo's squadron broke formation and dove toward the core. 12 ships, flying faster than anything should be able to fly, carrying charges that could wound a god. Behind them, the fleet fought with everything they had, buying time with blood and sacrifice. Ships exploded around Jiwoo. Her squadron shrank from 12 to 8, to 5 to 3. The darkness reached for her, trying to find a way into her mind, but her shields held. The human technology held. She reached the core. It was beautiful in a terrible way. A structure of impossible geometry, glowing with light that was not light, pulsing with a heartbeat that echoed through the void. Jiwoo felt the entity's attention turn toward her. It knew what she was doing. It knew what the charges would do. Jiwoo, get out of there. Taeho's voice crackled through her hardwired comm. Not yet. I need to place the last charge myself. The automated systems are not accurate enough. You will die, maybe. She guided her ship toward the final placement point. But if I do, make sure they remember. Make sure the whole galaxy remembers what we did here. What we gave. What it cost. She planted the charge. She activated the detonation sequence. Then she turned her ship and flew as fast as she had ever flown in her life. The charges exploded. Light erupted from the core. Not normal light. Something deeper. Something older. The entity screamed again, and this time the scream was pain. Pure, absolute pain. The darkness convulsed. It pulled back from the fleet. It retreated into itself, shrinking, fading, dying. No, not dying, sleeping. Forced back into dormancy by wounds it would take eons to heal. Jiwoo's ship was caught in the edge of the blast. Her engines failed. Her shields collapsed. She tumbled through the void, unconscious, bleeding, alive. Admiral Yuna's flagship reached her first. They pulled her from the wreckage and rushed her to medical. She would survive. Barely. The dark threshold fell silent. Not the hungry silence of the entity. The true silence of empty space. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Assembly offered humanity a seat on the Council. A place of honor among the elder species. Recognition for everything they had done. Commander Daewon declined. We did not come back for power, he told them. We did not come back for gratitude. We came back because it was right. Now we want to go home. We want to rebuild. We want to live in peace. The Assembly accepted his decision. They had no choice, but Taeho did not go home with the others. He accepted a different role. He would stay behind and teach the galaxy what humanity had learned. He would update the warnings. He would build monuments. He would make sure that this time, no one forgot. The entity will wake again someday, he told the Assembly. Maybe in 1,000 years. Maybe in 100,000. When it does, you must be ready. You must remember what we taught you. You must never make the same mistake twice. They listened. For the first time in history, they truly listened. On New Goryeo, the celebrations lasted for days. People who had spent their entire lives in hiding walked under open skies for the first time. Ships that had been sealed for generations flew freely through the stars. A species that had given up everything to survive had finally found their way home. Jiwoo recovered slowly. The doctors said she would fly again. But it would take time. She did not mind. She had done what she needed to do. She had finished what her ancestors started. One evening, her grandmother came to sit beside her bed. The old woman had been a child during the Great Retreat. She had watched humanity flee the galaxy and spend 3,000 years in hiding. Now she watched her granddaughter become a hero. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Jiwoo looked out the window at the stars. They seemed different now. Brighter. Closer. Full of possibility instead of fear. I am thinking about the warning, she said. The one our ancestors left. Do not wake the silence. Everyone ignored it. Everyone laughed at it. And then, everything went wrong. Yes, her grandmother agreed. That is what happened, but we came back anyway. We helped them anyway, even though they did not deserve it. Jiwoo smiled, and for the first time since the battle, there was real joy in her eyes. I think that is what makes us human. Not our technology, not our tactics, just our stubborn refusal to give up on people, even when they give up on themselves. Her grandmother took her hand and held it tight. You did well, she said. Your ancestors would be proud. Outside, the stars burned steady and bright. The darkness was sleeping. The galaxy was at peace. And humanity, after 3,000 years of silence, had finally found its voice again. They had been mocked. They had been forgotten. They had been dismissed as failures and fools. But when the universe needed saving, they were the ones who answered the call. That was the lesson. That was the truth. That was the story that would be told for generations to come. The galaxy had mocked the ancient human warning. Reality had hit hard. And in the end, humanity had risen to meet it, as they always did, as they always would.